Hey everyone. On today's show, we have Ammon Bundy as our guest. Ammon is running for governor in the state of Idaho, and his platform is libertarian enough to get the endorsement of Ron Paul. We spent the first 10 to 15 minutes talking about the events at Bunkerville from 2014, and then talk about everything from national divorce, cryptocurrencies, protecting law enforcement from not having to follow unlawful or unconstitutional orders, and eliminating income and property taxes. Before we get to that conversation, I do want to mention that this episode has been brought to you by the Libertarian Party of Nevada. The Nevada LP wants to preserve and expand what the Founding Fathers called inalienable rights. Meet friendly, like minded people at LP Nevada events, volunteer, run for office, or donate to the Nevada LP and help take a stand for freedom. For more information, go to lpnevada.org. Once again, that's lpnevada.org. Now, on to the show. It's the Battleborn Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Sadak. With me is Adam Heyman. Hey, Adam.
Hey, Randy. How are you?
Good. And today's guest is Ammon Bundy. Now, Ammon has the distinction of taking on the federal government at least twice in court and beating them. Is that right?
Yep, Ammon? At least twice. Yep.
And
well, that makes you a bona fide hero around here.
I mean, just numbers wise, I want to say just going into court is it's a losing percentage. It's like 90%, if you go to court.
97, little over 97% conviction rate in the federal courts. And those who go to trial, it's like 98% lose to the federal government. So, it's extremely, extremely rare to beat them. And then even more extremely to beat them twice. And on top of that, they put their best teams and they spent $100 million trying to prosecute my family.
Well, I'm sure that high conviction rate is just due to the fact that they run such incredibly accurate, law enforcement. They obviously get criminal people, right? I mean, they never get the wrong guy.
Oh yeah, I mean, everybody's a criminal, right? I mean, everybody's a criminal that they arrest.
3 felonies a day, isn't that the book?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's such a great story. Just like you define the odds, really, is what it comes down to. But the amount of corruption engaged with the prosecution, especially the trial that I really followed was the bunker, the standoff from 2014. There was a lot of just dirty deeds and misconduct on the part of the prosecution, which I don't really think that people know how much that was. I mean, there's been reports of it and stuff like that, but I mean, the depths that they went to, staggering, really.
Yeah. There was over. First of all, they put us in prison for 2 years, and a year of that we spent in solitary confinement because they were trying to break us, because they knew they didn't have rights. So they knew that they were completely in violation of our rights. So they tried to break us in solitary confinement to get a plea deal. That's how they get so many convictions, because they just break you until you give up. But we didn't give up. We finally get to trial. And in the middle of trial, we began impeaching their witnesses to the point where we exposed that there was over 3,800 files, not just documents, files that they were withholding of exculpatory evidence. Exculpatory evidence. And we blew that all up. And what they were trying to do is they were trying to basically create a completely different narrative to the jury than what really went on. And so they were just hiding, and including that the FBI HRT team was involved. And that's the same team that went into Waco, the same team went into Ruby Ridge, the same team that killed Lavoy Finicum in Malheur, and they were involved at the Bundy Ranch. They were the ones that were kind of running the operation, and they didn't want another, black eye among the public, so they tried to just, clear all of the evidence of any involvement that they had, and they got caught, and because of that, the courts didn't really have a choice and had to let us go home and dismissed our case. They appealed it. It went to the Ninth Circuit, and a panel of judges unanimously ruled that to uphold the dismissal with prejudice because of the corruption.
It's such a fascinating and just truly, I mean, if you're going against an entity, the federal government, that has virtually unlimited resources, it's a daunting task. It's something that I wouldn't wish on anybody, really.
Getting a
No,
unanimous verdict in your favor from the Ninth Circuit in particular, sort of a double exclamation point.
yep, yeah, it was just too egregious, and they had to let it go. Anyway, I mean, I could go on and on and on. There's the Wooten leather. We had a whistleblower that came out, right at the end of right before the trial just blew up for them, and they didn't want that information out there. Just, kind of gross, sickening stuff that was going on in their operations while they were at the ranch. And, they had a big board with all of our faces on it, and they had big red X's like on those that they wanted to take out, and the list goes on and on. And it's just government at its finest, right?
Well, the fact that it didn't work was amazing. And when that happened, I just could not believe that the feds were backing down in the face of armed resistance. It makes me wonder what would have happened if people hadn't rallied and come to your aid or your
No, I
father's aid.
I think I wouldn't be here. I think they would have taken our life.
Yeah,
I
they'd have
truly
Waco'd
believe
you.
they would have. Yep. They would have called us extremists, and they would have made up some story about how we were crazy fanatics, and therefore they had to kill us. And that's just what they would have done.
That's the
With
playbook, right?
Yep. And luckily, it happened during an era where we had uh, live video, capability with social media, and there were so many people that had that running that they couldn't create a different narrative. And we were very, very disciplined in making sure that we didn't exaggerate the story and what was going on, and we documented it the best we could and stood on solid on our rights, and didn't make something other than what it was. And that gave the people confidence in us to come around us, and we end up with thousands of people in support and beat the federal government at their own PR game, even when they had a CIA agents there with alias social media accounts and so forth, trying to turn and sway the public against us. They had what they called a First Amendment team that was going into the crowds that assembled in for the support of my father, to try to just sway them against my father, and it just didn't work. None of it worked because we stood on the facts and on the truth, and we believe that God gave us the advantage.
And you had that ability, like you were saying, that the social media was. I don't even know if you would be able to even do that today, just because it seems
No,
like
we
there's such a
wouldn't.
clamp on stuff. Whereas
Yeah,
like back then, this is going what 2014, I believe it was.
this
So
is eight
yeah, I
years
mean,
ago. Yeah, it's
yeah.
crazy.
So yeah,
I wonder if
it's a
some of what
resistance to
helped
voice.
was that you had the first people that came with cameras to cover it were like local news crews rather than some CNN like behemoth that comes swooping down. That had to have helped to get unfiltered video going out.
I think so. There was independent media there, local media, and then of course towards the end, you had all the satellite trucks and everybody trying to get, you know, their uh, their viewers, but they were a little bit late to the game. And I think that probably did. I know the video that really went viral that started to was a video from an independent media guy by the name of Pete Santilli, and he videoed when they tased me 3 times, when they threw my aunt Margaret to the ground, when they're sicking dogs on us, and then he, and he, sent that out, including video of the snipers on the hills, and
Hmm.
eventually them killing cattle from the helicopter and all of that. And so, that went out viral. In fact, he was so successful in his media, both at the Bundy Ranch and in Oregon and Malheur, that they arrested him, and he spent 2 years in federal prison with us.
Wow.
Wow. What was the crime?
They tried to throw him in the conspiracy, saying it was part of the conspiracy to do all these things. And I mean, there was no communication or conspiracy with that reporter. He was just if you quote unquote a conservative reporter just trying to report the truth. And because they were so there's a terminology, I'll just use the second half of it. They were so hurt that that they that we were getting the truth out, and they couldn't control the narrative, that they just began slapping anybody down, especially him, that was so effective. In Malheur, when he was doing that, he was running live 24/7, running live on Malheur, and he had like at some points I think he was pushing like 9 million viewers live,
Wow.
and it was just they just couldn't control the narrative, and ultimately arrested him, and that shut him down, of course. Put him
Well,
in
it sounds
solitary
like
confinement.
prosecutorial misconduct, but we live in a federated republic with just laws, so I'm sure something happened to that prosecutor. The person's probably in
Oh,
jail right now, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. You know the answer to that. Uh, Even though there's gross misconduct, prosecutorial misconduct, intentional covering up of exculpatory evidence, massive exculpatory evidence, not one government agent or uh, attorney or FBI, not one person, no Bureau of Land Management agent, nobody was ever reprimanded, lost their job, demoted, nothing for the Bundy Ranch or the Oregon stuff.
Brutal.
That's par for the course, I suppose.
Yeah, they protect themselves, and then they say, well, why don't you, people say, well, why don't you sue them? Well, because I don't want to spend 20 years in federal court, a couple $1 million in the hole to attorneys, and find out that some circuit court just overrules a judgment if you can get it, and that's the best you'll see.
Plus, our regime officials are spiteful, and you could spend all that money, lose your case, and then make some enemies who come and
Yeah,
harass you with some made up nonsense.
yeah. I just want to be left alone. I just want to live my life. I'll make my own money. It was a huge hit, financially, on my family, and emotional and all of that. It was a huge hit, but uh, you know, we're tough, we're resilient, and I don't want nothing from them. I want them to leave me alone. I don't want their money. I don't want their help. I don't want nothing. Just leave me alone. That's all I've ever wanted. That's all my father's ever wanted. And that's all anybody else has ever wanted that I've stood for and stood with.
As it stands, where we're at here in 2022, um, is there any like, I mean, has there been any inkling of anything else happening with, say, up in Bunkerville, or anything like that, or
No,
or is it
my
just pretty much done?
it's done. And
Good.
that's part of the story. Because now I'm not saying that they can't come up again, but the people spoke and the people defended, and they backed them off, and my dad went back to ranching, and they did kill about 60 head of cattle by helicopter, and dumped them in mass graves, but we recovered, and my dad recovered the herd and restored the damage that they did to the range and to the ranch and all of that, and he went back to ranching, and he was able to do that because he's still under the cloak and protection of the American people. I mean, they're like, if we ever try to do anything to Clive and Bundy, there was thousands this time, and there'll be tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands next time. And so he goes about and does what he's been doing, and my family's been doing there for 150 years. and you'll see a Bureau of Land Management ranger come down the road, and he'll be in his horse or truck or trailer or tractor, and they just pass each other and they pretty much ignore each other.
That's so bizarre. It's a little bit of an awkward segue, but you are running for governor in the great state of Idaho. And one of your many great planks in your Keep Idaho plan is that you are going to take back Idaho's land from the federal government. And sitting here in Nevada, the state where the feds own over 85% of our land, I would just love to see somebody be able to accomplish that. How are you going to do it? Have you got a howitzer?
I do. I got a few of them. May not be the traditional kind, but we definitely got a few of them. And uh, you know, it's right around 62% of the land mass in Idaho is controlled by the federal government, unconstitutionally controlled. And 72% of our subsurface mineral rights are controlled by the federal government. And it's causing several real major effects in Idaho. One, it's causing our affordable housing crisis because it's a supply and demand issue. We're fighting over the private property, and the price has increased so much that no one can afford homes unless they bring money from outside the state. Then the land that we are building on is agriculture. So we're destroying our agriculture here in Idaho, which is our number one industry. How does that make sense when we got great land all around these towns and cities and stuff to build on, but the federal government won't let us build on it? Third is Idaho can't pay its own bills. We have to go to the federal government to pay about a third of our bills. And kind of give you an example of this, of why we can't pay our own bills, is because of examples like our cobalt deposits. Idaho has the largest cobalt deposits, the most wealthy cobalt deposits in the United States, but the federal government is controlling them, and they're leasing the cobalt for mining exploration to an Australian company, and they come here from Australia, bring their employment and all employees and all that from Australia, and mine Idaho's cobalt, pay the federal government exorbitant amounts of money each ounce, and then they sell it to make batteries and so forth for a huge amount, and the people of Idaho get nothing, and then in return we got to go back every year to the federal government for money to pay our own bills. And that's just happening over and over. It's happening with natural gas, it's happening with our water, it's happening with our mineral explorations, it's happening with our land and ranching, it's happening with our lumber. I mean, northern Idaho is timber rich. It's just thick, beautiful forests that if they don't burn down because they don't allow us to harvest them, we're still not allowed to use them. And they're buying, and here in Idaho we're buying lumber from Canada and paying 3 or 4 times the price when we can't cut down our own trees because the federal government won't allow us to. Anyway, so that's number 3, and 4 is we're creating what I call a Hunger Games syndrome, where we're literally driving everybody into the cities and creating these districts that that can't, their children and the community can't survive, because traditionally they've survived on harvesting the natural resources and using the land and resources, and so they're drying up, or they can't expand, and so the kids are just going to the cities and losing their conservative identity, and creating this political climate that's going to dominate the rural Idaho and turn us into another Oregon or Washington or Nevada, Colorado. That's what happened. All these states were ultra conservative states, and they've turned into liberal states because of these reasons. So you can see, to me, and to Idahoans, this is an extremely important thing, correction that we need to make. And I've got some really good plans, and it looks like we're going to get an attorney general in that 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 I know understands, and he's a friend of mine, and looks like we're going to get him in as Attorney General, which is also going to be very beneficial to this fight.
It'll also be easier to fight against the blue cities when you absorb all those red counties in Oregon. It's going to make your state look kind of funny, though.
Yeah, it'll have a weird shape, but Eastern Oregon and Eastern Washington will sure like it.
So, how is your gubernatorial race going? The primaries are over, so you have a clear picture of who your opponents are. How are you sitting?
Really well. It's going to be head to head with Governor Little and I. There are no other, names really, known names in the race. And so it's going to be a battle. And he's got a heck of a war chest. So, it's just going to have to be a major grassroots effort, which we have been making. And, November is going to be very interesting. But statistically, we were able to almost to the exact percentage predict what was going to happen in the primaries. And because of that, it's given us a lot of confidence in what we believe can happen and should happen if we run our campaign right in November. And so that's that's encouraging to us.
Do you think that the idea, and this is just like because you brought up the change in the shape of Idaho, possibly. Can you talk maybe a little bit about the idea of national divorce? Even, I mean, it's an extreme idea, but it is something that maybe even 5-10 years ago wasn't even on the table, but it is
Yeah.
now.
So there's I think it's called the Greater Idaho Movement, where Eastern Idaho and some in Western or Eastern Washington want to join Idaho because those states have become so liberal. It's constitutionally it's a challenge because they have to have the approval of both uh, the legislature of Idaho, legislature of Oregon, and Congress has to approve it. So that's a challenge. But the idea of actually, succeeding or leaving the United States, legally is of course a big challenge. States like Texas could do it fairly easy because in their enabling acts they left that clause in there that they could leave any time. And I think there might be one or two other states that have similar things that and as far as terminology. Um, and so, leaving it without war um, uh, would be difficult. However, I think that no matter what, we have to get Idaho into a position where we're really strongly check and balancing the federal government and basically challenging any unconstitutional action that they're trying to impose on the people of Idaho. Um, relying heavily upon the county sheriffs to enforce the laws inside the county and not allow the FBI or other federal agencies to come in and to oppress the people, and backing them as a governor and as the Idaho government backing them, making sure that our National Guard, I mean, they call it National Guard. That was all part of deception, but basically making sure that the Idaho Guard is strong and understands who their leader is, and that there are certain actions that have to take before they can be called up by the national government, and that their duty is to secure the state and not to empower the federal government unless it's to repel a invasion outside the borders of the United States. And so, these are all things that just need to be put in place correctly to give a really, really strong check on the federal government And if they continue to, push the overreach and tyranny they are, and the destruction, to be honest with you, upon the people, then there might be some talk about states uniting and leaving the union. But until then, I just want a state to truly stand and say, look, you're just not going to do that here. And I believe Idaho has that the political climate to do that.
You're absolutely right. National divorce is probably a long ways away, but we have seen in the over the last 10 or 15 years that states' rights thing coming up, where maybe we can't divorce from the nation, but we can ignore their laws. And even left-leaning states like California embrace this implicitly when they say things like, "We're just going to change the drug laws here, and I just don't
Yep.
care what your federal law is." And a lot of legislatures around the country have taken an interest in that and enacted similar things, and I think that's wonderful. If we can't secede, then we should be nullifying and using the Constitution
Yep.
as our benchmark. There, it sounds like a pretty good idea to me.
Yep.
So you and against the incumbent. So what's the difference between the two of you? Why should Idaho people vote for you?
Oh, well, he all of a sudden during the election season become the most conservative guy in Idaho. It's amazing.
Sounds like
But
the
yeah,
GOP.
yeah. But
Any threat to their power, they start to pretend to be, I don't know, conservative, libertarian. I don't know what they
yeah,
pretend.
exactly. I mean, he's gone as far as it's amazing. He put the state on lockdown in early 2020. We were one of the first states to arrest a pastor for holding
Oh,
church
that's right.
outside.
Outside. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
and
I
we
couldn't
had
believe the cops went along with that.
I know it's just anyway, it's difficult to understand that they don't put the two and two together. Um,
That was in Boise, wasn't it?
no, that was in Moscow. Yeah,
Oh,
Moscow,
really?
Idaho. Yeah, and and then they arrested they under the order they arrested a mother for being at a park with her children. They raided and businesses for not closing down, all under Governor Little's orders. Governor Little was the first governor to outlaw hydroxychloroquine as a remedy for COVID.
Yeah, ours did
So
that too.
yeah, but ours was the very first one of all 50 states, and now he's trying to say that he didn't do all that, that he didn't, do all those things. He's even done, issued press releases saying, I was the one that kept Idaho open, and that, anyway, it's just fun to watch, and you hope the people, get a, get and do a little bit of research and understand just a little bit. But so that's who he is. He's I think he's been in an Idaho office at some point for the last 150 years, and and he's just that guy. He's also came from an extremely. He's actually a very wealthy man. He came from he's a third generation uh, rancher that run sheep and his grandfather or great grandfather amassed a massive amount of wealth, and so he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, and just kind of is that guy. But the real concern is what he's doing in Idaho when it comes to uh, you know attracting and following this liberal woke kind of movement. Um, for example, he in his time as governor, he's increased the food stamps program by almost 25%, the largest increase in all the states in the United States. He designated over $200 million of the COVID funds for government housing, uh, and he and and the list goes on and on. And so, we're sitting here going, well, uh, we're trying to preserve our conservative identity, if you will. We're trying to remain, independent. And on the other hand, the leaders in our supposed really quote conservative state are implementing these very liberal agendas that are, attracting the wrong, if I say the wrong type of people. And when we look at what they did in Oregon, Washington, California, Nevada, New Mexico, Colorado, this is what they did. They made it so that people can come into the state, live off the state pretty much full time, and then politically just destroy the state and overturn the state into, the liberal mess that we see in Oregon, where they're literally just destroying themselves. Not only that, anyway, that's just a little bit of what he's done, along with the full destruction of the right to worship, the right to travel, the right to trade.
Is he proud of those measures? Increasing the food stamp program and shunting money into. I mean, it just sounds like an admission that your policies are a failure, that your people are starving and they've got no place to live.
He hasn't said much about it. I've had to be more vocal. It's just something he's done. But what he has been touting, he's been claiming that Idaho is in a surplus. And I mean, I could go into that if you wanted to give me a little bit of time, but basically, here we are. He's actually returning tax dollars back to the people right now, saying that, we're in such good fiscal shape in Idaho that we're going to give some of your money back. And in reality, what he's doing is he's buying votes, because, just to sum this all up into, a sentence or two, basically he is used all that COVID money, because the office of the governor received $18.7 billion in COVID money, and he has been able to use that at his discretion. And now there's so much money flowing around the state that he's able to claim a surplus, and now he's giving just a little bit of that back to taxpayers here in Idaho, making it look like he's done such a great fiscal job here in Idaho, and it's just the opposite. It's just the opposite.
Have you looked at, as far as just switching gears here, regarding money? Because in your paper, or in your Keep Idaho plan, you do talk a little bit about cryptocurrencies.
Uh-huh.
And given that the federal government is spending, just printing money like it's, well, I mean, we're seeing the effects of inflation now. I mean, the official rate is 8%, but I think if you just go down to the gas station, you'll see exactly how much the inflation is. Can you talk a little bit about that, as far as protecting, using cryptocurrencies and protecting wealth, and maybe even moving away from the dollar?
Well, your whole plan is really good, so feel free to brag about any of it. It's from our libertarian perspective, it's pretty darn good.
So, it's about protecting wealth, but also creating independence. We know, I mean, any sane person that has any knowledge or even a touch of fiscal understanding can see that the U.S. dollar cannot last very much longer unless we do make some serious corrections. That's just that's just the way it is. I mean, how else do I say it? So being able
counterfeiting is bad.
Yeah, counterfeiting is bad. It's another form of theft, and causes the massive inflation. So the state adopting cryptocurrencies, digital currencies, and allowing the people to, and really fostering and encouraging the people to hold their wealth there is going to help protect them. And it's also going to create independence from the federal government. And when you create independence and you get people that are more free, they're more willing to take risks. They're more willing to add to their wealth and to their portfolio, if you will. And when they do that, they're going to prosper, and those around them are going to prosper. Also, if we could trade in this, and if these currencies become available to people, then they're able to use it, borrow with it, and shorten the time of return because of borrowing. And which everybody has to be careful with that. But it's part of the economic plan that we have put together that we know is crucial in getting people to think differently and to trade differently and to create independence. And so we're excited about that. I have a lot to learn in that area, but it's very obvious that um, we need to put our financial faith in something other than the U.S. dollar.
Anything else?
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say that just the idea of even like to plan ahead, to plan for the future, you have to be able to have like a stable currency or some way to store your value so that you can plan for the future and invest in the future and etc. And that's the one thing that I think that, I mean, we're just seeing the effects now, but we've been talking about it for years as far as this unrelenting printing press that we have. We're just spending
Yeah.
money, sending it overseas. We spend what are we sending the $40 billion over to some
Yep.
Oh,
European
it's
country?
going.
So,
It's going.
so I just like the idea of putting having a place to put your wealth where it isn't eaten away by inflation at 8, or the official number is 8% or whatever it is per year. I would say more, but um
Yeah, I don't see how they're claiming 8%.
yeah.
When you look at the cost of living, um, it's I mean, it's pretty close to doubled. The cost of living in just a couple of years is pretty close to double. I mean, you look at the prices on the shelf at the grocery store, you look at vehicles, you look at houses, and what hasn't at least doubled?
When
Uh,
the consumer price index becomes embarrassing to the regime, they change the definition of what is the consumer price index.
yeah,
The fact that food and energy isn't in there, just to name a few, it's just stupid.
yeah. Well,
Can we go ahead? I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. I'm good.
I was going to talk to you about taxes, as far as eliminating all of the taxes on your platform here, at least property tax, personal income tax, and you have a plan to just basically have a sales tax, or you call it a consumption tax. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yep.
So can you talk about that?
Well, I mean, it's a principled thing for me. I don't believe that there's any way to tax a people morally except through a consumption tax or a sales tax. And even that, to me, is hard to swallow. But if we are to have this entity that is there to be powerful enough to uh, secure freedom and bring justice, which is supposed to be the legitimate purpose of government. If we are to have that, then we need to fund it, and the only way to fund it morally is through a consumption tax or a sales tax or a trade tax. And so, I'm proposing to eliminate our property tax and replace it with a consumption tax, and ultimately, principally, to replace income tax and any other taxes with a sales tax. And I the reason why I kind of like to say consumption tax is because I like it connected to an actual consumption, to make sure that if you're going to buy fuel, then you buy fuel and you pay a tax on it, and that goes to the roads. If you're going to buy a house, you pay a consumption tax on it, and that goes to, your services, your utilities, and for your emergency services and sheriffs and so forth, your local community, and so it's connected there. And I believe it's very principled, it's very practical. You're not trying to cut out government, because some people are so afraid of that, but you're minimizing it through the collection of consumption taxes, and making it legitimate again and accountable to these taxes, but you're still funding it. And so it's something that, to be honest with you, it's probably one of my most popular um, I guess, proposals in the Keep Idaho plan. It's got a lot of people really excited. The idea that they can own their home and that they're not renters to the state anymore is really exciting. And then for me to show the numbers how it works, and how you could just switch to a consumption tax, and all of a sudden now you pay it up front when you buy your home. Government is funded. The legitimate purposes of local government are funded, but you own your home. Why wouldn't we do these things? We don't, simply because, really because of corruption, waste, and people are just afraid of change.
And there's something insidious about the fact that you're basically renting your property. That's so un-American.
Yep.
And I
Really
really hope.
nothing more could be more un-American than that. I mean, I
Absolutely.
think you
Yeah,
understand
I
that.
love your plan, as I said. And if you're going to lower taxes, you have to, obviously, to balance the books, lower spending. And your plan has tons of ways that you can do that. You're going to hopefully do something about wasting police resources on victimless crimes. That's
Yep.
optimistic, in a very good direction. And also, I have to assume that people in Idaho are just as pissed off about their school system as people are here in Nevada. And it seems like you're for school choice, and certainly separating our schools from the federal government and making them more local. Hopefully, giving parents some more options, and that should save money, tons of money.
Absolutely. Just opening that up, applying free market principles, is going to, create a much more, well, I'll say efficient but productive education system. When I mean productive, that we're actually educating our children for the future, rather than just following some curriculum to check off a box so that someone can get paid a good pension. It's just That's what that's what I'm proposing, and it's simple. Supply or provide Apply, free market principles. Um, Free the schools up, and put the parents in charge of the money. And you do those two things, all of a sudden you created a buyer seller, a willing buyer, willing seller type situation, and everybody benefits from that. Everybody, even the teacher that doesn't want to be accountable, to producing, even in the long run, they benefit from it.
Sure, no one wants a monopolist as an employer either, or as a customer. No one's happy in there except a bureaucrat.
Yep.
And the great thing about libertarian governance is it gets the government out of the way so that private institutions aren't crowded out, and you have a much more vibrant civil society with things happening at the local level that are more appropriate to human interaction, rather than just sitting back and hoping somebody from some capital city or Washington D.C. Will come and fix everything for you. It's very unhealthy.
I couldn't agree more. Um, we are capable people, and I believe most people are capable, but they are enabled because of many things. A lot of them are simply because programs and things become available to them, and it enables them. And We just have a good opportunity here. Idaho still has this, rugged individualism idea. There's enough of us here that we still think that way, and if we can unite a little bit better and stop nitpicking on one little thing and dividing, stop, whether it's common law courts or 5G or whatever it is, if we just stop, saying, I hate you because you don't believe in 5G, or I don't like you because you think there's a different way other than common law courts. If we just stop that and realize that we all just want to be free, and freedom is very simple. It's freedom by definition is the ability to do whatever you want to do, as long as you're not infringing upon your neighbor's rights. And if we would just agree to uphold that and stand behind that, um, uh, we have the power easily to set this state straight and to use the mechanism of the state to secure liberty and to check the federal government or any international government that might come down and try to impose their will upon us.
I think one of the interesting things that you've talked about, as far as the state is concerned, is the police. And there's civil asset forfeiture, as well as you in your platform. You talk about the police not having to follow unlawful or unconstitutional orders.
I love
Um,
that.
can you talk more about that? Because I think the in the past, especially the past couple of years, there has been a lot of anti police. Well, I mean, there's been a lot of violence against a lot of just a lot of negative police attitudes. And some of it's very justified, I would say, but I think that you have a solution to that. To talk. So, could you talk about that?
Yeah. So, I have been by the establishment and by the left, mostly the establishment and the mainstream corporate media. They've tried to label lynch me as anti-government, someone who hates police, and so forth. And it just couldn't be further from the truth. It's just I see the danger of the police, and also the benefit of it being done right. I'm not naive. There's no country that's ever been thrown into tyranny or oppression that it hasn't been done by the police, by the officers. And so, to sit there and say, I'm going to worship the police no matter what they do, I'm going to honor them, that I'm going to back them no matter what, I refuse to do that. But that doesn't make me anti-police. Uh, George Washington said government is force, and he also said that it's like a fire. It can be a useful servant or a terrible master. Well, just because I like to cook my food over heat and I hate to eat raw meat doesn't make me anti-fire. Just or I should say this other, because I like that, because I don't want the fire to consume my whole house and to burn me up and to burn my children up and to destroy everything I have. It doesn't make me anti-fire. I like to eat meat that's medium rare uh, with a little salt on it, and I can't get it that way without heat. But that doesn't mean I want that same fire to consume me, to kill me.
Hmm.
And so it's the same thing with the police. You know, it's the little bit that we need and the right way. And I believe very strongly that the right way is through the sheriffs, the county sheriffs, because they are elected, and the
Elected.
people give
Yeah.
them the policing and arresting power, and we can also take it away. Just like, on my stove, when I fire it up, I got a gas stove. Well, I could turn it on and I could turn it off and I could turn it up and turn it down as I need to, because I'm in that power. But when you have unconstitutional policing agencies like the FBI, even like state police and even city police, and I know it's hard for some people to accept, but there is no way to turn it off. There is no way to keep it accountable because they're not elected, but a sheriff is. And so, with that idea, I've taken an oath. I've made an oath to the peace officers of Idaho, and that is, as governor, I will create a committee that I'm calling it, where if any officer who's took an oath to the Constitution, both U.S. and state Constitution, if they are upholding their oath of office and their superior tells them to do something otherwise, or they begin to try to fire them or discipline them, terminate them for upholding their office and not obeying an unlawful order, the state, the office of the governor and the state, and we hope the attorney generals will back that officer, defend them, and protect their position and their income and their honor. We will back them, and there's no other governor out there or someone running for officer that I know of that's made such a promise to the law enforcement, if you will, in any state. And so this idea that I'm anti-police is just opposite. I'm absolutely willing to back any officer that upholds his oath of office.
Yeah, it's a great piece, and I really hope. One of the things that's happened in the last couple of years is I think the right is finally starting to wake up to the fact that there's a difference between the monopoly police power and law and order on a society level. I think since conservatives and right-leaning people are temperamentally predisposed to want law and order, obviously those are good things. They just assume they have to back the police and back the prosecutors like no matter what. Like to not do that would be, I don't want to be an agent of chaos. I don't favor crime. But your case with your father and what happened to the prosecutors in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial and just the police abuses that are finally caught on video, so we can't just play a he said, she said game and, always believe the cops. I think finally the conservative leaning people in this country are starting to be forced to recognize that there are problems with the monopoly provision of the police power. And we need to be mindful of that as we structure our institutions. And as I look at your policy and hear you talk, it sounds like you get that. And I hope that's emblematic of something that's not just a one-off, that's starting to become a movement.
I think it is. More and more people I talk with of all ranges, and I'm not talking about the normal people at a town hall or a meet and greet, although I think that's increasing too. But the voices like you, like I'm pleased to see when I start talking about sheriffs and the power they have. You guys shake your head, it. And I've seen that when I was a little kid. My dad was saying this when I was barely old enough to understand, what was going on around me, and no one hardly understood this. And so, in the 40 years since then, it's become something that a lot of people are understanding, and it just completely makes sense, right? And I think, and it's being communicated to a lot more people, and people are getting that. And so in that way, maybe we are winning this battle, or at least maybe down the road, we can get some benefit of people understanding this and starting to more effectively implement it.
I think so too. And it has to be coupled with not forcing our law enforcement officers to prosecute victimless crimes, which makes the public just hate them.
Yep.
It makes the citizenry the enemy rather than, you used to look at the police at the corner and he was a good guy. You trusted him. He was there to help you if someone tried to steal your wallet or assault your grandma. Well, that's not the case anymore for a lot of people. They just seem like the cops are nothing but an enemy. When they're not actively trying to throw you in a cage or trying to shake you down for some fine or something. We make serious mistakes when honest, law-abiding, good-hearted citizens are worried about the cops and get scared when they see one.
Yeah, when a cop pulls behind a soccer mom and she's just
Right?
terrified and sweating.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that way. They should be, looking to them as with honor and believing that they will do all they could to protect that little soccer mom in her effort to get her children where they need to get to. But that's just not what happens. And that's,
Amen.
like you said, it's because of they have found a revenue source that's called victimless crime, and really compromise the confidence of the people in the policing agencies.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
In fact, I was going to say that there is this because you had mentioned like incentives, and you talk about it in the in your plan also. There is this idea of civil asset forfeiture, which is corrupting influence as far as like what the police do. And I believe you say I believe it's 75% of people in jail or in prison in Idaho are in jail for nonviolent. Is that or drug related offenses? Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, yeah. Drug related,
75%.
drug related.
Okay.
It's huge, and Idaho per capita incarcerates more people than any other place in or any other state in the United States, and we know that the United States incarcerates more people than any other country by three
Yes.
times. So literally, you can say that Idaho it has the highest incarceration rates in the world.
Yeah, you
And
show it in your website in a
yeah,
very embarrassing bar graph. The
yeah,
United States is 4x the incarceration rate of the planet, and Idaho is even worse than the U.S. In general.
that's right.
That's
And
horrible.
I know. I've never seen a state that just arrests everybody for everything. I mean, it's insane. And what it comes from is Idaho is such a non-crime safe place, and yet we still have these over employed agencies, these policing agencies. So they have to go do something. They have to fill the jails. They have to arrest people. They have to fill the courts. We just simply don't need them. We don't need that many uh, police officers. We just don't need that many. And it all comes to this, funding, overfunding, and kind of this uh, idea that all police are good no matter what they do, and it's really prevalent here in Idaho. And when the crime is so low, we have more police officers per capita than Chicago, Illinois has,
Wow.
and yet
Well,
we have no crime.
unfortunately, it's the nature of a government mandate to become a self-licking ice cream cone and to create an excuse for it to enlarge its coffers and enlarge its fiefdoms. And ultimately, I mean, I'm a radical. I think ultimately nothing but market-based competition, even in the realm of security and law, is the only way to solve this problem. But until we get there, at least we can shrink these agencies to the point where it's appropriate for the jurisdiction you live in, and not let it just inertially grow like a cancer.
Yeah, I've proposed, been pretty vocal about dissolving the Idaho State Police into the sheriff's agencies, sheriff departments, I should say, and
It's better
and
structure.
yeah, and hoping that the sheriffs are very selective. There will be some responsibilities, but not much. They already patrol the freeways here. They already put they already which I only agree with for the safety of the people so they can be there if there's a wreck and so forth. But they already do the things that the Idaho State Police is doing. Idaho State Police, which is kind of like our highway patrol, is our highway patrol here. Um, we just don't need them. We don't need them, and so you know, uh, let them go into the sheriff's departments if the sheriff's departments need them, and if they don't, they can go find a living in the private sector.
Sounds pretty good to me.
All right. Well, we're coming up on the end of our time here, Ammon. Thank you for coming on. Do you have any final words before we let you go?
I just want to, promote my website at votebundy.com. I'm asking for people to, take that information, share it, support me. I I know it says donations, but I like to use contribution because, it's going to take everybody contributing to this effort in whatever way you can, and including financially, because running a statewide race, being a leading candidate uh, is not cheap, and we do have a great opportunity here. I plan to seize it. I have an amazing team, and I have tools and the ability, and it's kind of like we kind of compare ourselves, our campaign, to like a semi truck that's ready to deliver this, really powerful campaign messaging, all of that. But if we don't get funded to fill it full of diesel, we can't go deliver it. And so we need people to go to votebundy.com, get informed, share the information, become a subscriber, and to contribute as much as you can to help this thing happen. And yeah, we're excited. I'm a thorn in their thigh, and they've already sued my campaign once. They've done all kinds of things to me already, and so I must be doing something right. So anyway,
Oh,
thank you
I
for
told
your.
you. I told you your platform was way too good. You're in serious trouble.
I know, I know. Well, these people have it, and they can decide for themselves what kind of future they want.
I hope they
Absolutely.
decide wisely.
All right. Well, once again, thank you, Ammon, for coming on. And Adam, do you have any last words?
Not so much.
Okay. Well, we'll end it there. This has been the Battleborn Podcast. Until next time.
This has been the Battleborn Podcast, brought to you by the Libertarian Party of Nevada. Check us out at our website, lpnevada.org, where you can learn more about us and about libertarianism, the greatest political philosophy known to man. At lpnevada.org, you can become a member, donate, volunteer, check out our upcoming events, or just sign up for our newsletter. Help us make the world a more free place, beginning right here in Nevada. That's lpnevada.org, the home of the Libertarian Party of Nevada.